Good afternoon and welcome to Enterprise Technology Spotlight. My name is Keith Hales with InfoSystems, where we believe that business leaders should get educated and get informed so that they can make the best technology decisions for their business, and not just leave it up to technology people within the organization, but actually dig in and try to learn more so that they can be active in these decisions. Joining us again today is Robert Goodwin. And Robert, thank you for joining us over this Teams meeting today.
Hey, Keith. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. You joined us on a few sessions before, and I'm certainly happy to have you back, and appreciate you taking the time to do this. As we are now a few weeks into this coronavirus challenge, and now I guess maybe by the time this podcast comes out, maybe even a few months in, I think what we've determined is that yes, some of the social distancing things are starting to lighten up, and those policies are going to be rolled out. Federal wide, statewide, local municipalities are still going to have certain restrictions depending on the severity of the virus and what's going on locally. But I think that this whole change has made a lot of companies really put some deeper thought into how they house their people, right? Having so many people coming to the office every day, the technology decisions that were made to have all those people in the office to support them versus how that looks and works when all those people are working from home, saving time and travel, and I'll call it quality of life issues for those who work in big cities with a lot of traffic. So I guess what I wanted to start off today was, Robert, you manage a large number of people on our team. How has our team internally reacted to this pretty dramatic and very quick shift from a very heavy in the office type of environment to a very heavy out of the office type of environment?
So that's a great point, Keith. I think as managing a team of I think close to 15 people now, we were used to being somewhat dispersed because we were always on the go. But I think the biggest impact to the team was around that lack of human connection, right? So the team responded well. We worked just as effective remote as we do in the office or even in front of our customers. Again, we do miss working with our customers face to face, but in this whole time with the COVID-19 and the social distancing that we have to do, we've had to quickly adapt to how to do troubleshooting, diagnose things remotely, and lean on the customer a little bit more and help walk them through certain aspects of troubleshooting, using them as our smart hands and feet, if you will. But it's also, I think, brought that customer relationship closer because you're spending more virtual time with them than it would be if we just went in and went off by ourselves and did whatever we needed to do and then say, hey, we're done, Mr. Customer, and walk out, right?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I feel like customer interactions are going to be significantly impacted. Look, they are certainly for our business, and I imagine I can't really think of an industry that hasn't been impacted. I mean, whether you're in healthcare and you're limiting the number of people who get to go into the office or go into a hospital room, right? Or you're in, obviously, if you're in some type of food service, then right now it's all out. It's all takeout. Hopefully that will return soon, and we can still go into restaurants, but it might be limited seating, and it might be under a different scenario for a while. Shopping centers, different types of service industries. I know I had somebody come and give an estimate on my house for minor work recently, and unfortunately, he had to come in. He had his mask. The booties thing. He's like, I can't shake hands. I can't touch. I got to do this. He wasn't in full PPE, but he was in a modified version of that, and literally wouldn't come into the house. Pop. I mean, he's like, I'd get fired if I do, type of thing. So, so I think we all have to be cognizant and aware of how customer interactions are going to change, and technology plays a big part of that. As we're doing a lot of meetings, and remote and using Teams and other tools and methods, which we referenced a little bit in the last podcast. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, I'd certainly recommend that you do. But moving forward, so at least I'm just going to talk about our example. We're moving into this process of not bringing everybody back into the office day one. We're probably going to shift to a cycling through, with limited people on staff. So what are some considerations, with going back and forth between, okay, some days in the office, some days out of the office, some days in the office, some days out of the office. I mean, what are some technology considerations to think through before we go down that path?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges, which may have already been addressed with the initial, um, push for remote connectivity, is if you had a desktop right now, you're probably working on a laptop. So at least from that standpoint, I think maybe that particular point is covered, and you're able to take your laptop on site or off site, things like that. I think some of the challenges are going to be around more and then like in our portion of the business. From an engineering standpoint, we're pretty flexible, but I think from a back office type deal, people are used to dealing with paper. So now you got to figure out how you're going to carry your files back and forth if you need to that aren't digital. So there's, I think, a challenge there. And also, I think some of the concern is going to be, we all know what our homes are like, right? You just referenced the guy that says, well, I'll get fired if I walk into your house. Well, now you're reversing that a bit. Now we're bringing our home environment back to the office, right? So I think there's a consideration to be made there on how do we approach, do we wipe down the laptops? How far do we go down that line for protecting the office from the home environment, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's the whole I'll call it the physical, it is potentially the virus or any virus really on, and I mean medical virus, not IT
right,
virus,
not a virtual virus. Yes.
on equipment or on files or on something physical and bring it back in. Obviously, if you're working from home on a company computer, hopefully if there's some type of IT virus on there, you've already found it. But that is also a big concern if somebody is bringing their equipment that hasn't been held to the same IT standards, right? That typically would be in the office. They've been allowed to be a little rogue. They're at home and they bring that stuff back into the office. Then you are exposing your whole environment to that kind of risk.
Well, that's a very good point, Keith. And I think companies are going to have policies in place where you just like you would sanitize your hands. We're going to have to sanitize the machines. You're going to have to come in. Internal IT is going to have to get a hold of your machine, do an initial scan, validate that it's clean. Not in a physical standpoint, but the virtual standpoint, right? That no viruses, malware, and all that kind of good stuff before you're allowed to connect to the corporate network. I mean, a lot of that I believe is just going to have to happen.
We'll be back with the Enterprise Tech Spotlight podcast after we pause for this special message. Have your IT projects created stress on your team over the last few years? More than half of IT professionals say they are burned out at work. IT departments are under constant pressure to keep systems running while completing IT projects on time and under budget. And they often report that they're understaffed and underfunded. InfoSystems is now offering free IT project review sessions. Kick off your 2020 IT projects the right way. If you're planning or considering some type of IT project, software, networks, servers, storage, phones, and want to get an unbiased and accurate understanding of the skills, time, and cost required to make it happen, this is the perfect first step to take. Our expert project team will help make sure you don't miss important details, waste money, or overestimate your capabilities. Visit the InfoSystems website at www.infosystems.biz to request your IT project review. Now back to the podcast.
That's a bit of the new norm, as the media is talking about nowadays. That may be some of the new normal process, and it may continue to be that way. With your bring your own device policies may alter. I know some companies had bring your own device policies beforehand, but now I think it's going to change to be more enhanced and a little more stringent in how the connectivity happens.
That's a good point. Yeah, and something that I think is going to be more relevant is all these cloud systems, whether that's Office 365 or Gmail or a cloud hosted application, which I know we use internally and a lot of our customers do. But even something as simple as a phone system, going to like a cloud hosted phone system. And unfortunately here in Chattanooga, we were impacted by a tornado pretty recently. And our alarm company was on a phone environment that they were negatively impacted. They basically lost their phone lines because of the tornado. So our local alarm system isn't functioning properly after that
Right.
because they didn't have a cloud alternative or a cloud backup in place. And so that's the type of thing that is, as you know, those cloud systems. One good side of them, and especially as it relates to phones, because most people think about, well, I've got my cell phone. I don't really need, I don't need a true phone system. But for those environments, maybe a call center, do a lot of
Mhm.
call forwarding, or do a lot of um, a lot of inner office direct dialing. And yes, you can still have very similar functionality whether somebody's in the office or out of the office or working from home or whatever, using these cloud type environments, phone systems just being one of those type of solutions.
Well, I think to that point, Keith. I mean, even our 24/7 operations, right, that we have, we have used a cloud platform on purpose so that they can operate from anywhere. So even if using a tornado as an example is horrible, an event that was, um, if their internet connection went out, thus you lose your phone line, you can always pick up. And if you can go somewhere that has internet connectivity, then you can resume, normal corporate activities and phone calls and monitoring and things like that. So I think the more cloud-based operations that people take on, the more freedom of physical locality you get, right? So you mentioned that I think in the earlier podcast that if cloud-based apps, it doesn't really matter if you're in corporate or if you're at home. That freedom of movement, I think, is going to help, and especially in this new normal that we're getting ready to walk into.
hmm So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Robert. So assuming that everybody, let's fast forward a year from now, and let's say
Sure.
there's a virus and everything is all good to go on the coronavirus challenge, and that's all behind us.
Right.
What percentage of workers are going to stay home? I mean, in your mind, what percentage of the workforce is not that was previously in the office? I don't mean the ones
Yeah.
that were already work from home, but I mean the percentage that was previously going to the office every day. What percentage is going to return, and what percentage is going to stay home?
So obviously, I think case by case, based on business, because if you're in the restaurant business, you can't work from home. But I think for those that have the ability, my gut call, Keith, is somewhere between 40 and 50% may elect to stay home. You get better work-life balance. You actually get better productivity, right? People are engaged and a little more focused, which is somewhat counterintuitive because at home you get all these distractions. But with the connectivity tools and with the Teams meetings and the virtual meetings that we're doing, I think a lot more people are engaged and focused on what they're doing, and you actually get more work done, right? You get more head. It's you don't have the drive-bys. People going, "Hey Keith, what about this?" or "Hey Keith, what about that?" So without those drive-by distractions, you end up getting more work done. So that's just my guess, right?
Yeah, and like we were talking about before the podcast, that especially in the larger cities that have a lot of traffic, your LA, Chicago,
Yeah.
Atlanta. Atlanta's nearby. Nashville even had gotten pretty rough on traffic. I know a lot of cities across the country were in similar circumstances. If I could avoid that traffic a day or two a week, right, just from a pure stress level, but also um, instead of leaving my house at 7:15 and working, till getting to the office at 8 and then working until 5 and then getting home at 6, if I can, maybe I sit down in my home office at 7:30 and I come out of that at 5:15, I work more. I'm a much lower stress, and I'm still getting a whole lot done. So no, I mean I think it's certainly something that's here to stay.
Yeah.
I don't know. 40 to 50, maybe my thought that might be a little high. I was thinking more like 30 to 40% are going to stay home, but
Well, I'm never the
only time will
optimist,
tell.
Keith.
Oh, well, you're also the technology guy, so it's all going to work just fine if people work from home. I'm
Well,
just a
yeah.
sales guy.
Yeah, right. So I think you're right. I think that with the abilities we have, we're going to see a lot more modified work weeks, right? Where it is the 2 or 3 days in office, or or 2 or 3 days at home, and some variation therein. I think is where a lot of people are going to settle. So in defense of my 40 to 50%, I'm thinking around that modified work week as working from home. So uh, but I genuinely think a lot of people are going to accept and adapt because we've proven technology-wise it can be done, and it can be done effectively, right? So a lot
Mhm.
of the old school thought that's been, I got to have people in the chairs and doing the things. I think this has proved, we were able. What I think I'm trying to say is we're able to leapfrog a bit forward from a technology and personnel standpoint and say, yeah, this is going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, only time will tell, and only the we'll be able to look back on this and see who was right, and the answer is probably neither of us is reality, and that's
Most likely, yeah.
as it turns out. But no, I think these are good things for folks to be thinking through. What impact returning to work is going to have on their business, not just short term, but I think long term as well. I'm a big proponent of face-to-face meetings because sometimes that's a lot better than doing something. Even these remote face-to-face meetings that we're having and being in the same room always is preferable. But nonetheless, between cost and the realities of the limitations, whether it's from the virus or just physical distance, that may not always be the case. And then the practical side of it as well, that if you have somebody who wants to work from home. I mean, I know we have some employees who they were primarily working from home long before this virus, even the ones who live in town, and that's okay because they, it was just better for them in their schedule and their personal life, and that's something that we can accommodate because good employees don't have to be in the office. Well, Robert, thank you for joining us, and I hope that those who joined us today for this podcast found some value. Certainly, we welcome any feedback and any questions that you have. Additionally, please reach out to us. Let us know we can help in this time, and hope you'll join us again for the next Enterprise Technology Spotlight.